and welcome to tonight's Flameside Chat here at Center College. Tonight's Flameside Chat is called Black at Center, a look back and a look forward. And I'm your host for the evening. My name is Jamie Powell, and I am pleased to introduce our two guests for the night. First, Dr. Raymond Burse. Dr. Burse graduated from Center in 1973 with a bachelor's in chemistry and mathematics. He was a standout athlete here at Center. He received his Juris Doctorate from Harvard Law School in 1978. He was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University, where he studied organic chemistry and played basketball, track, crew, and rugby. He is the 14th president of Kentucky State University in Frankfort, and in the past year, he has made waves in the national media by giving up $90,000 of his salary to increase the pay for Kentucky State's lowest paid workers. Our other speaker for the night is Professor J.H. Atkins. Dr. Atkins joined the college in 2001 as Assistant Vice President and Associate Professor of Education. He received his bachelor's from Kentucky State and his master's and rank 1 from Eastern Kentucky University. He holds certificates in instructional supervision, principalship, and superintendency, along with his lifetime teaching credentials. J.H. is a leader both in the Danville community as city commissioner and on campus as an advocate for diversity. He has been a strong supporter and leader for the Diversity Student Union, the Diversity Committee, and Center's Posse program. And I'd just like to give a special shout out. We are also joined tonight by members of the Student Activities Council and other students who are watching live from on campus here in the Ball Camp Theater. And one quick reminder, these chats are interactive, and we would like everyone to participate, so don't just sit there, get involved. Comment in the YouTube comments or tweet your questions to #Flameside. So before we get started, I wanted to read a quick note that we received from an alum. We've already received lots of feedback from lots of alums about this event, but this one was particularly interesting, and it came from Mr. Frank Yeager, class of '57. And he was so pleased to hear about the topic of tonight's Flameside Chat that he sent this message, and I'm going to read an excerpted portion of it. In 1954, as a rising sophomore attending Center's summer school program, I was approached by Bunny Davis, who coached the Black Danville Yankees baseball team, because they needed a catcher. I agreed to catch for the Yankees. Most of the time, I was the only white face on the field or in the stands. Though this was at the time of legal segregation in Kentucky, it was a great experience for me. Bunny Davis was a very special person, and as I understand it, he has been recognized for his leadership in Danville. After I left the White House of Presidents Kennedy and Johnson as a special agent of the U.S. Secret Service in 1965, I went to work on my graduate degrees and was part-time employed by Western Kentucky University's Desegregation Center, where I was involved in the racial desegregation of public schools in 17 southern and border states, including Danville City Schools. In my opinion, this was one of the best and worst times in American history. The best because people from all walks of life stood up and did what was right, and it was the worst of times because some people fought civil rights and racial desegregation until laws were enacted and enforced. While we have made significant progress in this country, I feel there is still much work to be done. And again, that's an excerpted quote from Frank Yeager, class of '57. So I thought that would be a really good way to sort of kick off our discussion tonight, and now I'd like to turn it over to Drs. Burse and Atkins.
Good evening. As I say, my name is Raymond Burse. I'm pleased to be with you this evening for this Flameside Chat. And you know, we've been given some questions to start this with. And the first one was, where was I on April the 4th, 1968? On that day, I was in fact a high school junior, and I can remember very vividly being at home with my parents that evening, and the TV being interrupted, and the announcement about the person was announced that Dr. King had been shot later in terms of his being assassinated. As a high school junior, I was in a high school that was going through major desegregation, and it was a very interesting time for us. What is most interesting to me is that on that Thursday evening, I was at home seeing that. On Friday morning, I actually traveled to Lexington, Kentucky for a Key Club statewide convention, and I was the only African American in our delegation who came, which was really amazing. So, you know, I was very much aware of civil rights, what's going on, things that were happening. You know, we were very active in our high school. We had issues with our principal. I think Neil Tucker, if he's still alive, so rolled his eyes at me and rolled up his grave because we gave him a very tough time. And you know, through all of that, it was some trying circumstances. I remember going back to school on that Monday, and the big discussion in school was whether our college, our high school, was in fact going to let all the African American students out for on the day of Dr. King's funeral. And the conclusion reached was they were not going to do it, but if parents actually signed, students were allowed to go. You know, you didn't get docked any credit, but it was noted that you were absent. My arrival at Center, I came to Center and enrolled in 1969. How I got to Center is also a very interesting story in that regards, and that is as a high school senior, a counselor from Center named Richard Raymond visited my high school. I got called out of class to go visit the counselor's office, and this guy from Center College wanted to talk to me. I had very little knowledge of Center College, of what was going on, and talked to him about that. You know, he wanted an application. I gave him an application, forgot all about it. And then sort of fortuitous, my father was friends with a guy named Jack Haddock. Jack Haddock played football here at Center graduate. And I think some people from Center called Jack Haddock, who in fact talked to my dad about, you know, you really ought to send your son to Center. And Jack Haddock sponsored my trip to visit Center. I was telling JH earlier, I arrived at Center, met Steele Harmon and Herb McGuire. And as we were walking out of the front end of Sutcliffe Hall, lo and behold, there was in person Tom Sprague, which was an interesting conversation for me. He spent about 15 to 20 minutes talking to me about what the Burgess of Center was all about. And as I walked away, I thought, this is really impressive. He's a really nice guy. And by the time I got back to Hopkinsville, the community knew that I was in fact coming to Center. I had signed to play football at Jackson State University in Jackson, Mississippi, and decided I was going to come to Center. So that's sort of how I arrived at Center. Your turn, J.H.
Thank you, sir. On April 4th, 1968, I was in Lexington, Kentucky. I was a high school senior at Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School. I attended there from 7th grade to the start of my senior year. During the senior year, though, the Lexington schools segregated across the city. Dunbar became a citywide 7th grade, and I was shipped off to the original Henry Clay High School. So I was at Henry Clay High School my senior year. Was scheduled to do my final visit at Kentucky State College that weekend. And of course, there was so much unrest and turmoil in Kentucky, especially at Frankfort, and most college students across the United States, that the weekend visits were canceled. But it was a very troubling time because I was a high school junior. I had my first white classmate and also had my first white teacher from kindergarten all the way to my junior year in high school. So very troubling time, product of what I call segregated schools. And my journey to Center was by way of Dean John Ward, who was very active in the community outside of Center, and he and I had been members of a group that's still in existence. It's called Citizens Concerned for Human Relations, aka we did the 15 Heritage Festivals, and Dean Ward and I, through that work, human rights and government for people in this community, began to talk about JH one of these days working at Center College. And after about a year and a half of that conversation, that debating, it actually happened. So I arrived July the 1st, 2001. I've been here for 14 years. Seeing the growth of Center College in total numbers, but most impressively, we've seen the growth of Center College when it comes to students of color. And we were scratching at less than 5% students of color on this campus in 2001, to where we can proudly stand forward and say that the start of 2014-2015 school year, we have approximately 20% of our student body that self-declare themselves as students of color. We have a few more, but we have some folks who do not self-identify. But that's how I arrived at Center. And I think part of my relationship of being the director of diversity, working in the admissions office part-time, and then doing work in the teacher education program, have given me the chance to impact and be influencing to all the students at Center College, not just the students of color. And then all the organizations and the things that I sponsored, it's about giving all of our students, because when I first arrived, students of color would complain to me about, why don't they ask me about what sport, what athletics you remember of. And that no longer happens, and I would have dialogues with students of color, and they say, well, I've been here for 4 years and getting ready to graduate, and I've been the only student of color in my class. And so from 2001 to 2015, those conversations didn't take place around anymore. The change has been how many students of color are in the same class, and then change has been what are students of color doing to impact the entire student culture, not just athletics. It never was just athletics, but the conversation has gone from athletics to where you see the conversation about students of color impacting the entire campus, the entire center community, and also the local Danville County community as well. So that's a little bit about 2001 to 2015, and the student diversity has really improved. So Ray, that's my opening comments as well, and so I guess they're going to shoot some questions our way.
Yeah, let's start off with one for you, Dr. Burse. You left Center for Harvard and Harvard for Oxford, and now you're the president of an historically black university. Can you comment on the importance of diversity in higher education and the differences between each of these institutions from your experience?
Well, all of the institutions that I've attended are very, very different. JH talks about diversity on the Center campus today. When I arrived at Center in 1969, I was one of 10 African American students on this campus. 7 of the 10 were male, and all 7 of the athletes, with the exception of my buddy Ollie Taylor, were athletes. So Center's athletic department was in fact recruited. So my beginning here in terms of Center and its whole diversity and effort, it was somewhat of a tough time, but it's also good from the standpoint that I think for all the African American students, it challenged us in terms of performance, what we could do, how we could excel. So I went from Center College with some limited diversity to Oxford University, St. John's College. And in my St. John's College, on my stairwell, I lived on a spiral stairwell. There were 15 young men on that stairwell, and we were from 15 different countries around the world. So in terms of true diversity, I experienced it firsthand. And went from there to Harvard Law School, which in many ways, in terms of student body composition, very much similar to Center in terms of the number of African Americans there. And now I'm at Kentucky State University. And I tell people on my campus, and really around this state, we are the most diverse higher education institution in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. 43% of my student body are non-black. And so we have a real melting pot, a real multicultural, multiracial, and multi-ethnic environment in terms of where it is. And I think it's fantastic for the classroom in terms of what we do. It's fun going in the cafeteria at Kentucky State and walking through, you see a table, maybe a Korean young man, a Mexican woman, a white female, an African American male, and the banter that goes on, it makes you think, you really have made some progress. So there are some real differences, but I think diversity in the classroom, diversity in the institution help make those institutions stronger because it brings diverse views, perspectives that enrich all of us.
JH, can you tell us about the Posse program and how it's impacted diversity at Center?
Well, yes, the Posse program is in its 10th year of existence at Center. We just went to Boston and we've recruited and offered scholarship opportunities to 10 outstanding Boston area students, I should say. It's a program that highlights leadership and diversity for Center College, and we now have over 40-some students from the Boston area who are on our campus. In fact, we're probably at 43. The neat thing is that they are white students, there are African American students, there are African students, they're from Vietnam, they're from China, they're from, like Mr. Burse just said, that they bring that diversity to our campus. It's a lot more than just racial and ethnic diversity, and diversity. The neat thing about them is that they are lots of times first-generation students, so they bring that type of diversity. But they also bring that inner-city diversity. That, we have Lexington, Louisville, a little Nashville, a little Memphis, but we don't have the Boston area. They come straight from Boston. They come from lots of different backgrounds. But they're being retained and they're graduating just like all the rest of our students.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask a question now from an alum, Kalinda Allen James. She's from the class of 2001. I actually know Kalinda. She used to work with me in ITS. Her question is, how are you supporting black students differently from other minority students on campus? During my 4 years, they made the transition from Black Student Union to Diversity Student Union. It didn't cause the other minorities to join, but made me feel that it was trying to mainstream my blackness yet again.
Well, congratulations. It's still a Diversity Student Union, and we have lots and lots of members who are of the majority race, but we also have a very diversified group of people, racially, ethnically, gender, sexual orientation, religion, and it has not caused any of us to lose our identity. I would have to say that the largest membership of the Diversity Student Union are our African American, our black students, but it's a coming together of diverse people who have an interest in increasing the diversity on this campus. So we do activities here that all different racial groups and ethnic groups, but we just come together and we find that we have more and more things in common now that we have matriculated to Center College's campus. So I don't really say I do anything different for black African American students. I do things to assist and increase the success of all students on Center's campus. So if you come to me and you're a black student, your needs may be somewhat different from someone who's not. But the ultimate goal is to increase your ability to be successful on this campus. DSU is very well and very much alive.
So for many people, issues of race and diversity are not comfortable topics to discuss. We're conscious that our words or questions may offend others. So I'm curious what steps we might take on campus with students as well as faculty and staff to have honest, open dialogue about these topics.
On campus? Well, I think the newest thing, one of the best things we've done in the last 2 or 3 years is that during our orientation session, we have a required diversity session for all first-year students. And it is being presented by the Diversity Office, the Diversity Student Union, volunteer faculty, volunteer staff, folks in student life. So it's a real diverse group of adults who give up their time and come and put these presentations on. So we are upfront and very visual right from the start, but all of our new students that diversity is important to this campus, and this is a safe place to talk and have those types of dialogues. So that's one avenue. I think the other avenue is that our North Center program and our convocation program. We're all making suggestions to increase the variety, the diversity of those different offerings. So our students are getting all kinds of opportunities. And then when we bring in a Raymond Burse, for example, DSU might sponsor his arrival on campus, but we make it open to all students because it's important for our students of color to see positive role models of color, but it's also very important for our majority students to see positive role models of color as well. So we open those presentations up to all to our entire campus and use it to the Danville community as well.
Okay, great. I've got a question here that's been tweeted in from Sean Smith, and he asks, what can alumni do to best support the black students on campus today?
Well, if I use my development head, I would say send more funds to the diversity office, but Sean and I go back a few years. Sean graduated while I was in this current position, but we've tried at different times to set up mentoring programs, to have alums come back and spend time with our current students. Sean has done it himself. John has also entertained students on campus because he's a social worker by profession, but he's also a stand-up comedian, and he's still young enough to relate to our students. But in the Danville community, I've tried to get Center alums to be hosts, to invite Center College students of color, but really to invite Center College into their homes, especially those who live far away, that are going to be here over the Thanksgiving break, Christmas break. I get to go home once during the course of the academic year. So sending money back, providing your own manpower and your time, and if you live close enough in the area, to invite Center College students to your homes. And I guess the other thing is I would say is that Center alums can also help us in providing internships for our current students.
Let me also add to that. I guess last April, Jake, we had our first Black alumni reunion here on Center's campus, which was a very successful weekend. And I think among the graduates who returned, it was fairly evident among us that interacting with the current day African American students, a number of them were actually reaching out, wanted the opportunity to be able to connect with graduates from Center, to talk about things that are going on, to be able to share. And so I think that if you're an alumnus of this institution, it would be well if in fact you establish a relationship with one of the African American students on campus, one of the WASI students, serve as an entree, as Jay said, create intern opportunities, and as always, send money back.
Okay, what do you both see as the biggest obstacle for a small liberal arts college in rural Kentucky attracting African American students?
I think Center has some of the same problems many institutions have, whether they're large or whether they're small or not. And that is that students are attracted to institutions or environments in which they feel comfortable in. And that and so there are a variety of institutions available. Students migrate to where they feel most comfortable. So as Center grows and develops, and as long as it creates a welcoming environment in doing things, then it will continue to attract African American students. It was hard in the 1960s when you started with one student, and then the first large class had 3 African American students in it. And by the time I got here in 1969, I guess there were 5 or 6 of us in our class, and it continued to grow after that. That's because the door had been opened, opportunities had been created, and individuals had stepped through it to help begin and create a welcoming environment, a welcoming culture. And then you had faculty members who were openly welcoming to students and helped to create that. So I think those are some of the things. Jay, you want to add more?
Well, I just think that we created that, what I call critical mass. Just the incoming first year students last year, 385 or 87 students, and you had 64 of those students self-identified as being African American, and over 200 self-identified as being students of color. So that critical mass is going to help us tremendously. One of my favorite students graduated in 2008, Renee November, from Owensboro, Kentucky, came to Center on a Thursday night, stayed overnight, mom stayed at the hotel, went to class on Friday afternoon, and then Friday afternoon about 5 o'clock, I was coming from one of my admissions trips, was in the parking lot coming to my office, and Renee, her mom, saw me, and they saw I had something on that said Center College, so we started a conversation. Well, she had been there for 36 hours, 48 hours, had not encountered a student or an adult of color. And she tells everybody that I met J.H. and he encouraged me to come back to this place, and she's still a graduate now. But that critical mass is important for students, but also for the adults as well. And we need a critical mass now in faculty and staff of color. I stress African American because this place is housed in Central Kentucky, but we've got to work on our students now being able to see role models every day in their classroom and all aspects of this college.
Let me also add, Jay, you don't know how important what you did to that young lady was important. Because when I was here, it's between 69 and 73, we had a young lady who came into the Center from Washington, D.C., was placed in the women's dormitory, and she was here for 3 days, did not see a single African American on campus. packed up her bags, went back to Washington, D.C. So, having that visibility when she did makes a real difference.
Well, they can't come in 2015 without encountering some of us. Okay. It's very intentional, yeah. Still doesn't make it. Doesn't guarantee they're gonna be a deposit, but we don't let that stand in the way of the other things. Okay.
So I've had a comment come in on the YouTube feed from Rob King, class of 2004.
What's a setup?
Yeah, that's right.
He says they're watching it as a group, together as a group. And his question is, they're all curious why there isn't a posse program of sorts from Louisville or Lexington.
Well, we can always have a center posse from Louisville or Lexington. We just can't quote unquote call it posse because that's an incorporation, and they have selected the cities in which they're going to assist colleges to recruit students from. But if Rob and Sean and the Louisville group wants to get together, we'd love to come down to Louisville and set up a cadre of potential students who come from Louisville. And what Rob is referring to is that my first 3 or 4 years on Center's campus, when we had a diversity student union meeting, the Louisville young men and women ran the place. He said, "Where are you from?" "I'm from Louisville." I said, "You can't even pronounce it right." But we go through stages, and we have high numbers of students from Louisville, Jefferson County, or Lexington, Fayette County, and now it's from Boston. But part of the recruitment effort at Center now has been that we can go into urban areas and get students of color. We could also go into rural areas where Raymond Burse is the valedictorian of his or her class, and it's a student of color. And they're used to being the only student of color in their class and in their school. And so it's an easy transition from that high school to Center than it is for some students from the inner city or the predominantly black high schools that oftentimes come into contact with. And then let me put another plug in. We talk about legacy students. Well, in my 14 years at Center, currently on campus today, this year, we have 2 African American females who are legacy. They're one's mom, the other one's father, are Center College graduates. And that's the first in my 14 years, because that says that Center alums of color are sending back their own children to this place. And that's another, to me, mark of excellence of an institution.
I've got a question here that's been tweeted in by the Center Student Activities Council. What is the biggest diversity challenge for Center as it moves into its 2nd century?
I think I just answered that question. Liberal arts, small, large, whatever kind of college in Kentucky, as it increases its enrollment of students of color, it's got to mirror that with faculty and professional staff and hourly staff of color. If you bring in students to this campus or any campus and you see you provide them with a global education, but the folks providing the education do not mirror society, that global world, that US of A world, then you're not giving them what they really need. So our biggest challenge, and those students watching this program need to start speaking up and standing up and demanding that they want more students, more faculty and staff of color in our community. And that's going to be costly.
Can you talk a little bit about what Center is trying to do or talking about doing?
Well, we've tried lots of things. We've had very little success, okay? The diversity committee constantly works on suggestions and outreach efforts to increase and recruit faculty of color. We have recruited faculty of color at different times, but it's always been one, he or she by herself, and without that network, that group of peers to assist in the retention, they oftentimes move on. So we've got to look at how we get a group, a quote-unquote cadre of people of color, adults of color, to matriculate to this place in the same year and create that on-campus mentoring networking program to help retain some of those folks. And we need to do that without lowering our standards. I'm not advocating lowering standards. We did not lower any standards to increase the students of color, on this campus, and we're not advocating loneliness standards and recruiting faculty and staff as well.
So I've got a question here that's been tweeted in by one of our students, Ty, and it's also going to sort of piggyback on a question I have for Dr. Burse. But Ty's question is, how can we make combos that address issues like the Black Lives Matter movement more productive than the last one we had with Dante Berry? And the piggyback question, I guess, is for Dr. Burse, if he has any tips about, you know, what more diverse colleges like Kentucky State, for like programming, better ways to just get conversations happening on campus than we're currently doing here at Center.
So I don't know what happened here. Let me, you know, one of the things that, and I talk about on my campus pretty regularly, and Center has had, when I was here and still has today, a tremendous convocation program. It is a critical part of the education process, what one is exposed to and what it does. I'm in the process of trying to create a similar type of program on Kentucky State's campus, and you know, this spring semester I think we've been fairly successful at it. One of the things that we try to do on our campus is, you know, I encourage student leadership, and that means that students who have, you know, what some would consider to be controversial views or positions, we encourage sort of the open discussion around those types of items. And you know, if there's an issue and you don't discuss it, you bury it. The most issues that get buried alive are not dead. You should be aware of that. And so we try to face head-on our problems and our issues as they come to us. You know, we, you know, in terms of our student body being 43% non-black, you know, we're very much aware of our programming that it has to appeal to a broad base of students. And we're very conscious about how all students on our campus are treated. And so as a result of that, we have open discussions about what the expectations are, what are we going to do, and you know, students have the opportunity to be able to speak openly to president, to faculty and staff in the campus about issues that are there. And you know, I try to be proactive in addressing things before they become a major issue.
And I think I would echo what Dr. Burse just said, that anytime you raise an issue that comes to the forefront and it's open dialogue about it, we have to be sensitive to the fact that not everyone is going to agree with us. And oftentimes we have our programs and the choir members show up, but the folks who are not supportive of what we're advocating, trying to teach about, the ones who really need to hear the message, the ones who don't show up oftentimes. But we still have to keep on sponsoring those programs and trying to give everyone an opportunity to attend and to have their voices heard. At Center College, one of the, I guess, our biggest issues with programming is that we oftentimes have 4 or 5 things going on the same night. Just like tonight, and we're doing this chat, and then we're going to go and watch the film movie, and they'll keep me out at 12 o'clock discussing it. But there are a lot of things going on this campus, and oftentimes some of the trivial things get in the way of our open dialogue about the most important things.
A question here that's been tweeted in by a student. What would you say to students considering transferring because of the lack of racial acceptance?
A Center College, consider that?
I'm sorry, what?
Is that a Center College student considering transferring?
I can't tell for sure if it's a Center student, but I'm assuming it is.
Okay, well, if it's a Center student, then I would ask him or her to have open dialogues with lots of different people on campus, especially with lots of his or her peers, our students, and get some direction, some advice, and assistance from some of those folks. But at the same time, there are a lot of adults on our campus who will be sit down and talk to the folks as well. Remember, Southern College is a great institution. It may not be the great institution that every one of us needs to attend. So if a student is not happy or a student is unhappy, and if we can do all we can to try to resolve the issue, but if it can't be resolved, then I would assist that student. President Ralph, don't shoot me, but I would assist that student in finding him or herself a place that they can feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable here, then you're not going to get the best education that you deserve to receive.
And then I would add to that, Jage, that grass is not always greener on the other side.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of times when you're in an environment that's very close to you, you assume that this is just really terrible and it's got to be someplace better. There may very well be a better place, but in most instances I've worked, students who have transferred or at least talked about transferring, have talked to those that did end up regretting it because what they thought they were going to find was not there. So I think as Jade said, have a conversation with the individuals on campus whom you're close to. Have a conversation with Jade. Have a conversation with others. Talk about what the opportunities are and do it. Now, I was with a state legislator last night who has happened to be a Center graduate and is in the leadership of the Kentucky House of Representatives. And he was telling me about when he was here, he contemplated transferring from Center to the University of Kentucky. And then when that information became known on this campus, there were 3 individuals, members of the faculty and staff here at Center, who visited him to talk to him about what he was doing. Not to say to discourage him from transferring, but to talk about what he was thinking, what he was feeling. And as a consequence, he didn't transfer. He had a great experience there at Center. So any of those who are contemplating that, I would encourage you to have a conversation with people here, because I think it could be eye-opening to you.
Absolutely. I now have a question that's come in on the YouTube feed from our own Dr. Bo Weston, Professor of Sociology, and it's for you, Dr. Burse. You came to Center in the earliest years of integration, just after the first class of African American students had graduated. What were your interactions with Danville townspeople like? Town gown relations in Danville today are pretty good. Black students today often report that if they have any distinctive treatment in town, it's as rich kids from Center rather than as African Americans.
You have to, in 1969 and 1973, the relationship that African American students on this campus had with the Danville African American Black community was close, it was tight, and it was part of what helped get us through what we were going through here. So on this campus, there were a lot of tough days, and a lot of us spent a lot of lonely days on there. But we had the opportunity to go into the Danville community. We would go to First Baptist, or just go to St. John's AME Church, and the mothers of the church would take us after morning service, take us home with them, feed us, or the preacher at the church would say, "Y'all make sure y'all feed these Center College students." And we weren't looked at as rich kids then. We were looked at as Center College students. And the community would welcome us. And many of the friendships that I made with the African American community in Danville when I was a student here at Center, I maintain to this day. It was very, very important, and there was always a very close connection.
Great. Another question for you, Dr. Burse. What was the most important item on your list of college attributes when your own child was engaged in a college search? And do you have any advice for other African American parents about to embark on this journey?
But I think it's so much an individual trait, but finding the school that is the best fit for your child. My 3 sons are and were very, very different in terms of how they learn, how they interact, whether they could do some things in an environment. So I had my oldest son ended up at Ohio State, which has 40,000 students on the Columbus campus. Middle son ended up at Fordham University in New York City, which there was about 8,000. And then my youngest son ended up at Southern Cal, where I guess there were 28,000. But each one of them found their own nook in terms of what was compatible to it. I didn't push them one way or the other, but what I was looking for is this going to be an environment that they're going to be comfortable in? Is this an environment that's going to encourage them? Is this going to be an environment that is invested in their success? And I wanted to make certain that there was always somebody on each of those campuses who were going to be responsible for my sons. And those are the kinds of things I look. It's really about fit. What best fit your child in terms of their learning style, their social skills and ability, and how they may be able to respond.
Great. Here's another question from Twitter. How should colleges handle hate speech?
That's a very difficult. One of the things about college campuses is that we encourage open, free speech, and there are going to be some controversial things that are said. Hate speech will be among those. And that you've got to be very careful in terms of where you draw the line and time and kind of things that you need to do. You know, my thing is a response to hate speech is to organize activities or encourage students and people on campus to have a dialogue about what people are saying and create a counter voice to that is, and so you expose students in the community to what's really going on in the real world, because when they leave the safe environments of our college campuses, they're going to be faced with many different challenges. And part of what we're doing is not only educating them in terms of the knowledge that they gain in terms of particular social matter, in their particular major or area of program, but we're also training them to be prepared for life. And one of the things you do in terms of being prepared for life is be prepared. Some people will say some crazy things, and you got to be able to do that. And then you want to encourage them to engage in debate. That's one of the ways in which they learn. So you do those kinds of things. We run into it. But then at that point where hate speech incites riotous activity, you cross the line and you have to stop it.
Nothing to comment on about that, JH? I see you nodding your head.
Well, seeing that may have come from a Center College student, I would encourage them to come to the next Diversity Student Union meeting and have one of those dialogues with us, because again, it's about the proper education and the proper tools to address the inappropriate language, whether it's the oral language or it's the written language. Needs to be addressed as language.
Got a really good question here from Kevin Titus, and he asks, if it would be possible for Center to partner with Black alums in order to form a committee or some sort of board of Black alums to focus on outreach.
Well, yes, that's always a possibility.
Well, coming out of the Black Alumni Weekend last year, there was a committee that was established to create communications between graduates and current students, sort of open up those channels to begin to do that. And I think, at least for the Black alumni who were here last April for the program, I think everybody who was in attendance is open to that and willing to do that, because all of us remain, committed with interest in Center. Now, when I was here last April, I was not president of Kentucky State University, so I will do my Center part after I do my Center part.
And my follow-up comment is to that group there in Louisville that's watching this presentation as a group. That'd be a great way to organize themselves beyond tonight. We'll see them on campus April the 10th, 11th, and 12th at the second annual Black Alumni Weekend. And this dialogue, this discussion shall continue.
Sounds like a good plan. I have another question tweeted in from the Student Activities Council. It is, what advice would you offer a minority student considering enrolling at Center?
Well, the advice I give to students in my admissions role is that if you're going to look at Center and you're seriously looking at Center, then you need to decide if you're really interested in small liberal arts education. And if you are, then compare Center to other small liberal arts institutions, whether it's the academic part, the study abroad part, the diversity part, whatever things you might look at a college, as you compare schools that are similar to us in making that decision. To compare us to a University of Louisville or UK to a Center, and I always tell students and families there's no contest. Center's going to always win because we're small, we're personal, small class sizes. All colleges talk about professors, so a lot of the admission still comes out in that conversation. The answer to that, but I think if it's a student of color, then you really have to look at what Center offers when it comes to diversity, and that's in the entire community. And I think the more I said, things are getting better, but we still have some work to do.
I would add to that, one of the things that I think often gets discounted and not really talked about. People used to tell me about this when I was at Center, and they would tell me about the Center Alumni Network and what we used to Louisville call the Center Mafia. And that is that there is a network of Center graduates across this country, across this state, who are still invested in what Center is. And so the students who come through Center have an opportunity to plug into that network that is very powerful in terms of first jobs, first opportunities, because the alumni know what the center can do from an educational standpoint, and they're willing to, in fact, employ and bring into their company, firms, and organizations center graduates. That's an added plus that students get by coming to center that a lot don't think about or include in consideration of where they're going to do their undergraduate education.
And Jamie, one other thing I would stress is look at the retention rate for students of color and the retention rate for all students. And then look at the graduation rate for students of color and the graduation rate for all students. And when it comes to center, I always advocate look at the 4-year graduation rate.
This is a question from Twitter. Has Center ever looked into the possibility of having historically black fraternities and sororities?
The answer to that is yes. We in our sort of language, we just had that conversation before we got started. Yes, we are currently looking. We're in discussion with one historically black fraternity and one historically black sorority. In the past, we've had to deal with whether or not we had the critical mass. And keep in mind, we're saying historically black fraternities and sororities, so because these organizations no longer have segregated memberships. They're all integrated. And so Greek life at Center College is very, very, very important to our students. And so we have the opinion that it's past time to give students on this campus an opportunity to look at some historically black fraternities and sororities that were created at a time where students of color were not allowed to join the other fraternities and sororities. But again, it's all about creating that inclusive community.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask both of you to just give some sort of closing comments here in just a couple of minutes. And I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping for right now. I'd like to thank both of you for joining us tonight, and also the audience for tuning in. We're actually going to end just a little bit earlier than usual because we are broadcasting Selma. We are showing that film in the Volcamp Theater tonight at 8 p.m. So we're going to give everybody a little enough time to get over there to the theater for that. To watch this broadcast later or to find out follow-up information, please check on the Center Alumni YouTube channel. We will be posting also on our Facebook page and Twitter. And then also our March, keep in mind our March Flameside Chat will be coming up, where we will be talking with our very own Dr. Bruce Johnson about NCAA goodies. So, gentlemen, what are some final comments, wrap-up thoughts you'd like to give us tonight?
Okay. I think my wrap-up comments would be that in 2019, this institution will be 200 years old. And as it gets closer to that bicentennial date, I think progress needs to continue in improving the diversity of the students, the staff, and the faculty of this campus. And I'd like to see that continue.
So we're messing with Jay. We're gonna have fun this evening. Let me say I've enjoyed the opportunity to be here with you, to share with you this evening some of my perspectives on Center, my perspective on my days at Center, and my perspectives on some of the social issues that are facing and addressing our country. I think it's been a tremendous opportunity, and I think that nothing beats ignorance better than an educated mind. So we got to be about the business of educating as many people as we can, particularly in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and really across this nation, because our country is crying out for it. It's institutions like Center and Kentucky State are available to provide that opportunity. So again, thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you both, and it's been my pleasure to participate in this and listen to the discussion. So you guys have a great evening. Everybody have a lovely night, and we'll see you in March.